everyone, welcome back to the Curator Shelf. And for today's topic, we are going to go straight into how do I make use of my collection. So these are just tips. Take what you need, leave the rest, that kind of thing. And you may have also heard other tarot tubers kind of like share the same things. Maybe they have other ways of they rotate their decks, and it's all good. It's all about sharing information, tips, and that kind of thing. And yeah, so without ado, let me just go into how I make sure that I try and like get through and use and enjoy what I have. And I'm looking over here because there's a whole pile of decks next to me. And first and foremost is that I am someone that's similar to, I think it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot that definitely mentions it. Other people have mentioned it too. I'm someone that's very seasonally kind of like attracted. So if I'm in the summer, I prefer decks that have that kind of like beautiful flora and fauna, and they show kind of like lots of fruit or animals and cute kind of like bunnies and that kind of thing, and sunsets and sunrises. And yeah, I'm one of those people that kind of like, will be drawn to that kind of thing. When I move into, let's say, the autumn, I'm always drawn to decks which have that kind of like hues of brown, oranges, yellows, very earthy greens, very much going towards that autumnal look. And living in Western Europe, I absolutely just love the moment where I can really see the trees. It's that saying, trees teach us how letting go can be so beautiful. And I absolutely embrace that spirit where, that moment where it's cold and the temperature here starts to go towards, like single figures in Celsius. And yeah, there's just this moment where I can just see we're in the cusp of everything retreating in. And when the palette changes, it's just a moment where my eyes pick that up. And I like to see that reflected in the kind of tarot decks that I use. So definitely autumn is one of those. In the winter, I'm someone that will definitely use a deck. I mean, for example, this is something that I would be drawn to in January and February. These kind of blues, this iciness, this grey. But it's got pops of color in it, which is a very deep hue, which is still kind of like taking on that kind of like sharpness in sight. And yeah, this is definitely a deck that I would use in the winter. And then we get towards spring, I'm again looking forward to those kind of like very bright tones and the pinks and kind of like that the Easter egg colors, basically, those pastels. So yeah, that's part of like, how I have decks in mind. But this is a bit more specific. It's kind of like, how do I make sure that I use decks during the month? And well, it's not even how I make sure, it's something that makes sense to me. That's the best way I can put it. So first of all, at the beginning of a month, I do a monthly spread, and I love doing that. It's kind of like just a good way for me to say, okay, it's the start of a new month, embrace it. I usually get my monthly spreads from the internet. I'm part of some Facebook groups. There's always somebody that's posted like, the month ahead kind of like spread. I think it's Ethne from Tarot Academy, or even in Dawn Michelle's group of Boho Tarot, or if you go to, I think also Nina from Shuffle Tarot, she's always posting spread. Basically, fantastic tarot tubers who have Facebook groups. People share monthly spreads, and I normally just take something from there. I also like to, if I want to, I just go into Pinterest and find something. And what I try and do is just, I kind of like use a deck to do that monthly spread. Now here's an example from the Llama spread from the 1st of August. I will make copies of that card, put it in, do some doodling. That's the kind of thing I like to do. I like to keep it very simple. I've tried kind of things like stickers and collages and stuff, but in the end, I'm someone that loves like doing my own drawings and stuff. I guess it's part of like the cathartic nature of connecting with what I'm writing. I don't know what it is, but I'm someone that loves doing kind of like little decorations and my own things. And yeah, and I realized that I like tarot journaling. This is tarot journaling, not normal journaling for me, when I keep it as simple as possible and kind of like have a set format. So then it's like less thinking, basically. So that's one way I do it. And here's like the one I just want to show you quickly as well for September, which again, shows you how simple I keep it. And what is the deck that I use? So you might have guessed by now, and I think I've spoken about it. This year I'm using the Wildwood Tarot for my month ahead spread. And I was thinking, like, that's a bit like, was that a random pick? Was it a conscious pick? I can't remember myself actually. I think, and it took me a bit to figure it out, I think it's to do with the fact that I'm a Virgo rising in my natal chart, and I'm very much drawn to that Virgo energy of earthy tones. So, as all of you have now seen by ad nauseum probably on this channel, I absolutely love this deck. It's just got such beautiful imagery. It's very easy to read. It's got keywords at the bottom. If you need the keywords, they're there for you. It is based on the Wheel of the Year, so one does need to be careful if they're using it to sometimes really look up the meaning in the guidebook. But this is a John Matthews, Mark Ryan deck, illustrations from Will Worthington, who of course I think I'll be stalking him soon. But yeah, so basically this is an absolutely gorgeous deck, as all of you know. And I personally I think I like it because the rising sign is really a depiction of our front facing, our forward facing look, how people initially perceive us. And it's interesting that for the month ahead, I've got a deck that I'm using, which is, really for me linked to my rising sign. So yeah, it took me a bit to realize where that earthiness was coming from, but yeah, it just makes so much sense to me. And this is a deck that just does so well in any season, actually. But it's the colors that really just always capture me in this deck. And of course, the illustrations. So yeah, so that gives you an idea that sometimes it's good just to have a deck that one can use for the month ahead spread. And perhaps for yourself, you might be a fire sign. It might be more of a fiery energy. I understand the modern spellcasters deck has that fiery energy. I'm sure there are other decks as well. So, or you might be a water sign in terms of rising sign, or whatever. You might have a preference for like a watery deck as your month ahead. But it's a way perhaps to just think of like, okay, what do I have in my collection that like fits that? And once we have a deck that's kind of like for a category, it can really help to just make use of it rather than it just sitting on the side, right? So that's what I mean by like, making sure that I give the Wildwood a bit of love, and that's like at the beginning of every month. The next thing I have is I have monthly, again, before I go into deep dives, I have a week ahead card that I pull. Now this varies. If I've got a tough week ahead, and I think it's more to do with the winter than the summer, I like to use a deck which has kind of like landscape art. I don't know sometimes why my rationale is that, but that's what I like to do. And this is a deck that I used a lot last winter, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, between like end of December all the way into like March for sure. This was like a deck that I went back to quite a bit. I think January and February it got a lot of love. And I have like a week ahead card that I pulled from it. Now this is Denise Linn's Nature Spirit Oracle card. It's a Hay House deck. Very accessible on Amazon. I love Denise. I love her guidebooks. She's an amazing writer, and the actual cards themselves are gorgeous. Now, I also have the other Denise Linn's decks as well, but I wanted to show you this one because I haven't really shown. These are the back of the cards as well before I forget. But yeah, these cards are just. I really feel like I'm looking at a postcard of some kind, and I'm being taken into a trip, and I absolutely love it. And she's done a phenomenal job. It's very much based upon, I think, Native American scenes and depictions, and that kind of spiritual shamanic contact. I find it very soothing, and for some reason, when I pull this in the evening just before the week ahead, like on a Sunday night, it kind of like can be really good for me as a meditation of what is the energy that I'm carrying as I go through the week. So for example, if I've pulled a card and it says, elder, that really think helps me think, if I'm going through the week ahead, am I looking at an energy where I'm expected to show leadership, wisdom, to be calm, or is it that I'm looking at an elder for guidance myself? Um, and then of course I will read the guidebook. I will definitely read the guidebook and see what Denise Lynn has written. But it gives an idea of like a feeling of soothingness. That's what I want to say when I use this deck. And I sometimes put then the card, because we were working from home a lot this year, I would put that card next to my PC, and it would be just really nice just to have a very soothing, gentle depiction of nature before I began work every morning, basically. So yeah, that's one idea. And for the week ahead, the other thing that I do, this is a little bit more, I think, summery and spring, I don't know, maybe it will continue into this year's autumn and winter, is I pull, I like to do especially weekend mornings. I don't know, it's a weekend morning thing I've lately picked up. So I've pulled a goddess card. Now this is the Divine Feminine by Megan Watterson. It's another Hay House deck. I bought this deck, honestly speaking, on a whim. So this is me not taking my own advice, right? I bought something spontaneously, but I had seen the deck for a long time. I know there's a lot of controversy in terms of, is there cultural appropriation? I'm not going to go into that right now because I think this is not really the video for it. But what I wanted to point out was that this deck has been really good for me in terms of just picking up a feminine energy. It's just done wonders in that sense. And maybe because of the fact, if you'd asked me a year ago, would I like photoshopped images, I would just be like, no. And I think I've proved myself wrong, actually. I think it's because it is a collage deck, and because it is photoshopped images, that for some reason I'm relating to it quite a bit. And this has been a really interesting deck for me to use as just sometimes the week ahead in the summer especially, or because I only bought it in August, sorry, so I should just say I've only used it in summer, or sometimes as a weekend morning draw, I will pull a card. And this deck, for some reason, I don't know why, but it's really attuned to my psyche. I even once had it where I pulled a card, and after a few days I thought, oh, I'll refresh it. So I shuffled the deck and I got the same card again. And then at the end of the week, on a Saturday morning, I thought, okay, it's the morning, it's the weekend morning, I'll pull a card. And again, actually, literally the same card came up again. So it was 3 times in the same week, the same card out of 52 cards. I mean, that is surreal. This is a very nice quality deck, very beautifully done in terms of cardstock. It's matte. That's the back. It's exquisite. I think it's a reminder of the amygdala, the almond shape that is representative of the female energy. It's also in our brain, and of course it's closely related to the name Magda, Mary Magdalene, but Magda because of it's very reminiscent of, of course, of a woman's vagina, basically. So a little bit kind of like, information there, but I think it's exquisitely done. And I find that the female energy has been done in very tastefully. That's the word I wanted to find. I find it's tasteful. I find sometimes decks go into a cultural appropriation, and then it goes to a point which I'm not comfortable with. This one, less so. So maybe it's nice washing, I don't know. But I really enjoyed this deck. I found it very soothing, comforting, and I'm going to say positive stuff about it. So this is a deck that I've been using for my weekend mornings, and so that's also a tip. Maybe you want to use a deck for your weekend mornings as kind of like a little bit of oomph, or the week ahead again as well. This would be also great for that. Okay, so that's we're 14 minutes in, and I've managed to do a few cards there. So then the next one. So the next deck that I've got is, right, so now we go into monthly deep dives. Now, as you all know, I've been doing this now, I think since March or April this year, I can't remember. But I began to use a deck where every day I drew cards from that deck, and I do that in conjunction with Connect With Your Deck, which is a Facebook group really well known. And I pull cards, and sometimes they reflect the question. There's like a monthly theme every month set. So I think in September we're doing positive vibes, which is always, it's nice actually. It's very positive. And for, I think it was for I'm just trying to think. Yeah, July I did the Greenwich Tarot. So that's the example I'm giving you today. A beautiful Llewellyn deck by Anna Moore, and the illustrations are Kiri Ostergaard-Lenord. Exquisite deck in terms of his illustrations, but this was just amazing as a monthly dive. I bonded so much with this deck. It's such soft, friendly energy, but it also gives like a lot of truth. I feel like I'm part of a story in this deck. I feel like I can actually join in the deck and its stories. I feel like I'm invited into the landscape. I really relate to the facial expressions. This deck and the guidebook come with information on why particular flora is used, why particular animals appear in the paintings and the depictions. So, for example, here the plants that we see, and then maybe not in this one. Sorry, I'm looking for an animal, but sometimes with some of them we don't. Oh yeah, with the Queen of Chalices, of course, we see there the crab. And then of course in her hair, the wreath. So the guidebook will give information on the symbology basically. Or here we have the badger, and then in the background, you know, the actual plants and the shrubbery here, there's a meaning for that. And I love the fact that so much effort and work went into making sure that each card depicts so much depth. It just taught me a lot, this deck, and it continues to teach me. So you know, if you're really, you know, if something, this is vibes with you and it's your kind of deck, I would recommend this. I think it's also great for a beginner as well, this deck, but it's also great for a seasoned person. I don't know how else to put it. So yeah, this is the Greenwich Tarot by Anna Moore, but this was great as an example of my monthly deep dive, and it gave me a chance to really get to know this deck very well. So yeah, and the other decks that I've done as monthly deep dives is the Herb Crafters. I didn't do a review on that, so I think next year I'll come back to it. The Herb Crafters, I've done the Druid Craft as a monthly deep dive. Then I did the Dreaming Way, I did the Greenwich Tarot, there's the Tarot of the Golden Wheel, and then for this month I'm doing the Everyday Witch Tarot. So at the end of the month you'll see a review on that. So that shows you that I've already gone through something like 5 decks or 6 decks I've just mentioned as deep dives. So that's just, it feels good actually. It feels good that I'm actually getting to know these decks. And I don't want to give them away now, or I don't want to pass them on, because I'm like, I actually got a lot out of that deck, and I'd love to use them again as well next year. Right, the other thing I have is a moon deck. So a deck that I'm using specifically for moon readings. You see, I just keep going on this stuff, right? So this year, for the whole of 2021, I'm using Tarot of the She. This is by Emily Carding. It is ink-based drawings. As I understand, she did the ink-based drawing free flow, and this deck is it's a Schiffer deck. Now, one thing is that I do struggle with the cardstock of this deck, which is, I think, the only letdown I have, but the actual images are beautiful. Now, if they redo this in matte, I would buy it again, because I do struggle a lot with the shuffling of this deck. I mean, I can shuffle it, but I've got very small hands. And the other problem with it is that as I shuffle it, a few times I've actually thought that I'm going to snag a card and it's going to bend, and I don't like that feeling when I'm working with a deck. I don't like the feeling that I'm about to damage it, and that happens with this deck because of the stickiness of the cards. So yeah, I hope that Schiffer redo this without the borders, somehow putting the titles on there, but no big, huge, thick borders, or borderless, and matte. I would love it. The drawings are just gorgeous. It's Fae energy. It's haunting. It's very deep. It can be quite. Also, it can be a little bit unnerving. So this is not a deck for. I wouldn't recommend this for a beginner, and especially if you want something soft and gentle, because this is a deck which is going to kind of like question. Well, it does for me anyway. It questions what I think. It's like it actually comes back at me in such a strange way. I usually use the spread that I use for this deck is from Ethany. She has like a moon calendar that she gives out freely, which is very nice of her. It's a PDF file. She also posts the spread on her Facebook page. I use her moon spreads to work with this deck, and I use it for the new moon reading and for the full moon reading. So I really get to use this deck twice a month, but I really sit with the energy. I might even use one of the cards that I've pulled for the reading and leave it in my altar space. Yeah, I mean, what more can you say? I mean, now just to note that the suits have been renamed in this deck, but the guidebook is very explanatory. And I have to say that this deck is the one that re-inspired me to do my own ink drawings, because I like using ink pens. I love using ink pens, actually. So yeah, she's really inspired me, basically. This deck is very, very good if you're artistic, or if you want to be inspired to do art. I think this is a really good deck. I mean, what I would do is like you can just pull a piece of like the colors, let's say from her hair, and use that as a way to start creating your own drawing and seeing where that goes. And you know, if this is Make a Princess, which is basically Princess of Earth, it says the gift of creativity. You can just see that where does your drawing go, and just do a freestyle drawing, and perhaps that shows our subconsciousness. So I would really, really recommend this deck for creativity, but also this year for my moon readings. It's been amazing. I'm just thinking maybe if I can quickly pull an example of how I've done my moon readings, because the key to my tarot journaling that's working for me is to not make it too complicated. If I make something too complicated, I just won't touch it. You know, it'll just sit there empty, basically. So I'm just trying to find a moon reading for you that I've done as an example. Okay, so, well, maybe not this one, but that just reminds me of another deck I need to show you. Full moon in Aquarius. So this was the 22nd of August reading, just before we go into the sign of Virgo. And that's a moon reading that I did. Now, this is using, I just want to check. Yeah, this is Ethany's moon calendar 2021. So this is one of her spreads. So I just did a little diagram there. I didn't print anything out. I just did some of my own doodles. The deck, of course, is Tarot of the She, and it's just very, very simple, as you can see. But that's how I like to just tarot journal. I just went past something, maybe that will help you as well, is I also did a reading, let me just quickly find it now, which is the Lionsgate reading. We had Lionsgate 88 on the 8th of August this year. So this is the journaling that I've done, which actually is, and I just pulled one card for that one. And because the Lionsgate is to do with the alignment of the constellation, especially from the point of view if we were at the pyramids in Egypt, the deck that I used, interestingly, so this is a good example of how I use my decks, is of course, let me just grab that for you. It's the Isis Oracle, and here it is. So yeah, okay, yeah, it's the Isis Oracle, and that was the one that I used. Now this is a deck which I know also has some controversy. The phenotypes are very much not Egyptian. I'm going to be very honest here, and that has disappointed me a little bit. I think it's important that if we are using a culture, we reflect those phenotypes. So I do want to really, really upfront say that. But going past that, because this this is not about cultural aspects. I just want to first show the deck. It's an Alana Fairchild. Just want to check again. Yeah, Alana Fairchild deck. The illustrations are by. I want to make sure that I don't get the name wrong. I know it's Jimmy Mantle, but I just want to make sure that I say his name correctly. So bear with me. I think I pronounce it as Jimmy Mantle. So yes, he's done the illustrations. I know he's also done the illustrations for quite a few other decks, Alana Fairchild and Stacey DeMarco as well. Going past some of the images, but parts of it is though that I really like the deck in terms of the way, you know, some of these illustrations are absolutely gorgeous. This is the back. This is matte cardstock, so it's one of the new versions that have been printed, and the colors in this deck are absolutely gorgeous. I personally think that the art has been done really well. It's just, again, it's the facial features which kind of like maybe go. It would have been nice to have used women from the Maghreb region, because that is of course more depicting women from that area of the world. So that's the only drawback I slightly have in terms of the colors used and the actual attention to detail and so forth. Of course, I'm not an artist, but it is beautifully done. And Alana Fairchild's writing as well is just gorgeous in this guidebook. She's really put a lot of work into it. So I will give it a positive review in that sense. And this deck has been good in terms of just, you know, when I did that draw, it was very, very, it was very much on point. It was, I think the card that I had was asking me to look at like my ancestors, and it was really on point in August of some of the things that I've been working through, because I've been working through family things recently, and it was asking me to look at my ancestors and my links to the generations before. So I was like, okay, it's really on point. And so yeah, and the other thing I do like about this deck, and I think that's one thing I applaud it for, is this is part of channeling female energy, and I think it's really important that we have this in our tarot community. I know there's lots of goddess decks, and I really still think it's so important that as a woman myself, I want to say that we have the ability to channel that energy of empowerment, speaking up, seeing women in everyday life, not just as a goddess from like 1,000 years ago, but in everyday life, rise up and speak up basically. And so yeah, I like the deck because of course it's drawing upon, you know, what was an ancient queen, and she's very much real, as well as, you know, her goddess attributes. So yeah, so I just want to say that I do like decks that are going towards that theme, and I think it's been well done in that sense. So yeah, so this is the Alana Fairchild deck, the Isis Oracle, and I used that for my Lionsgate 88 spread. So there you go. So that was a good use of it. I think this is going to come out again in the winter. I think I can almost feel her saying, you need to make use of me, and I'm like, okay, I hear you. So yeah, this is a deck that I think it's one of those ones where I don't always want to hear the message because it's a bit too honest, but it's real, you know. And look at the inside cover, that blue, that beautiful royal blue. So yeah, I'm glad I made this purchase. So that's another example of using a deck. And we're at 28 minutes. Okay, so quickly going on, I also have decks that I've mentioned for art journaling, not just art journaling, sorry, creative writing. Here's another example. Here's the Kipper deck from Ciro Marchetti, and beautiful illustrations. And I wanted to pull a deck which I haven't shown before, but this is a Kipper deck, so it's actually its own system. But what I love is I love the illustrations, because I think that would be fantastic for creative journaling, creative writing. So here you go. You've got these illustrations which, you know, this is toil and labor. I mean, you could really make a story out of this. You can even pull 3 cards and just
instead of it being a reading, just use it as a story, as a storytelling, sorry, and make up something out of it. I absolutely love this deck because it's like looking at the illustrations in a book. Very soft. It really reminds me of A Certain Age in Europe, which is what it's based upon. And yeah, I really love this deck, and I just thought I'd quickly show it because I have a few times thought I need to do like some creative writing, and I've pulled out one of these cards thinking, what am I going to make up using this? And it's been a lot of fun actually. So I don't use it normally as a kipper deck, I just use it as writing prompts basically. And I might even combine it with another deck and just pull out a few cards around it and kind of like make up some really strange story. But the point is that I need to exercise my mind in terms of imagination and creativity, and this is a good use for it. So there you go. And lastly, the other use that I have, the other category of decks that I have is decks that I use specifically for reading for others. Now, I will use them for myself as well, of course, but these are decks that I know that I can turn to if I need to do a reading for somebody else. And they are quick in terms of me being able to understand what's going on. They don't scare the querent, because sometimes with some querents I can't use certain decks. I mean, for example, the Deviant Moon deck that I showed last week, that would, as much as I love it and as much as some other people might love it, it might be that somebody's not really in the mood to see those kind of depictions. So I try to be, if I'm reading with somebody, even if it's a friend, if she's not used to or he's not used to tarot readings, I try to be careful of not scaring someone. So this is the Golden Art Nouveau, and it just works so beautifully as a deck for reading for others, because it's classic Rider-Waite imagery, but it's I love the decadence in it, and I think it's very bright. I think it just, it's just very easy to read, and especially if I don't want to, I don't want to work really hard at the reading. I'm more interested in having a flow in terms of reading for others. This is a deck I can always turn to, and it does the job. And and I can quickly just pick up the whatever the message is that I need to give to the querent. So this is the Golden Art Nouveau, and the other deck that has been popular with people that they're still not very that comfortable with tarot, that it's their first reading, is a deck that I bought on a whim last year when I was coming back to tarot, and I don't use it that much, but it reads well. So before I forget, the Golden Art Nouveau is, I just want to check again the name. I'm going to butcher it now. Julia Massaglia. Sorry, I butchered her name. I think she's the same person that did also the Tarot Muha by Lo Scarabeo. Her art is just beautiful. I would really encourage. I think there's been several tarot tubers who've done kind of like decks comparing the Golden Art Nouveau to then the other Art Nouveau decks, and just to give us an idea of like, what is it that you want to buy, that kind of thing. And I really like the other Art Nouveau decks too. I picked this one up in the end. I think I might get another one soon. But this artist, Julia Massaglia, is just absolutely fantastic. And this is a Lo Scarabeo deck, and I just want to say I absolutely love the cardstock, and I'm a cardstock snob. I am a real cardstock snob. But I actually sit at night and sometimes watching TV, just shuffle these cards because they're slightly glossy and they are slippery, but the edges are like rough, so they don't go flying off. And I don't know how else to put it, but this. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Can you hear that shuffle? I don't know how to put it, but there's a bite to that shuffle. I sound strange by now, but yeah. So anyway, okay. So the last deck I'm going to quickly show, because we're at 34 minutes, is the Good Tarot, and that has been very popular with people who are new to tarot, or they, you know, I think this is just a deck that helps diffuse any kind of stress or tension if somebody's not really that comfortable with it, with tarot readings. And this deck has been popular with people that I've read with. It's not my most favorite deck. It's by Colette Baron Reid. It's a Hay House deck, I should mention. But the artist is Jenna Della. I'm gonna butcher the name as usual. Della Grottaglia, who does a lot of the art for Colette Baron Reid. The pictures are exquisite. That's the back. The pictures are exquisite. It's beautiful art. I've seen, I think it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot who turned this into an oracle deck, and it looked divine, basically. So it can be a deck that's more of an oracle deck as well. But I think that the way it's been done is it allows people to just really be open and receptive to the reading because of its softness and its gentleness. So yeah, this is a deck that I don't usually use unless I'm reading for others, and then all of a sudden it's in use. So this gives an idea of me using decks beyond just the seasonal aspect. I've talked about the month ahead, the week ahead, daily pulls, moon readings, creative journal prompts, and also if there's like a special festival or a celebration, for example, when we had, you know, or we have like a special celestial event like Lionsgate, or it could be just any celestial event, using an oracle deck that you have in your arsenal, you know, you have on your shelf. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to stop here because this has gone on for so long. But yeah, thanks for watching, and thanks for being part of this community. Thanks.